Welcome to Tax Sale Insiders, the latest from Tax Sale Resources, bringing you information about tax sales from experts in the industry. TSR has interviewed a variety of industry leaders across the country, including Stephen Morel of JurisDeed in Louisiana, Maureen Zink of Carlisle Law in Ohio, John Stanko of Stanko McCarthy Law Group in Illinois, and many, many more. The following is just a small snippet of a longer, in-depth interview with one of these leading industry experts. We interviewed Stephen Morel of JurisDeed, who has been instrumental in the statute changes for the state of Louisiana and knows everything there is to know about tax sales in his great state. In this clip, he addresses the non-judicial foreclosure process, and you won't want to miss it, so stay tuned.
I think we've covered pretty well as far as what Louisiana sales are all about, how the sale occurs, what the redemption period looks like, how the ownership bid works, and how that doesn't affect anything during the redemption period. So let's go back to at the end of that redemption period, and you've bid. Let's say we'll start and make it simple. You got it at 100% of ownership, right? Mm-hmm. What happens at the end of that redemption period? What is that foreclosure process? I'm assuming it's a foreclosure process. What does that look like for those few liens or that small percentage that makes it to that point?
Once it's hit the end of the redemption period, first of all, the government's out of it. The redemptions during the redemption period are exclusively handled by the tax collector. There's obviously a calculation provided by law of what that amount is, and that the transfer exchange of money is handled by the collector 100% of the time. So the investor's out of it at that point. But as soon as the redemption period ends, it's the exact opposite. It's the collector is completely out of it. They won't look at it. They won't hear you come to the counter and ask for redemption price. They won't talk to you. They'll say, go talk to the taxing investor. And so at that point, obviously, it's an asset that the investor can use to negotiate a payoff privately with the person who's if there still is a person who's desiring to redeem that lien. It's not a legal redemption. We just colloquially call it a redemption because that's having the effect of redemption, right? But essentially, they're buying the property back at that point. So that's one. The first thing that can happen is that there can be a private workout with the tax lien investor. If that's not happening, or the investor doesn't want to do that, then there are two choices to pick from for the investor to pursue converting that lien to a deed. One is a non-judicial process of completing and this is guided by statute, and it starts actually during the redemption period. So it's important to know that if you are going to go down that road, and many people do, you need to be aware of it, and during the redemption period to start preparing for it then. There's a round of notifications and certain things that are timed that you need to take advantage of. If you don't do that, you are not necessarily out of the water, but you're in a much harder position to get that confirmed down the road. But this non-judicial process, you never enter the court system. It is a non-judicial foreclosure. You are going to complete a set of due diligence, which is pretty typical to in most places that have such laws. You're going to have to do a title search. You're going to have to do, look for the interested parties, look for the people that have an interest in this property, owners, lien holders, mortgagees, and identify where they are and provide them with a final notice, their right to redeem, et cetera, and then wait out a certain amount of time. You don't need to break out your calculator or anything here, but there are two different buckets of time. If it's the time since the tax sale has been a minimum of 3 years, but not quite 5 years yet, basically if it's been between 3 and 5, then the waiting period once you've sent that round of notifications is 6 months. Once you send out the letters, right? You've already done your due diligence. You found everybody you need to be provided that notice, and you've sent out the letters. You have to say 6 months have passed basically you're allowing time for them to come in and one more chance, right? Let's buy this back. And if that doesn't occur, then you can go into court and ask the court to say, look at this body of evidence from when the government first started collecting delinquent tax until it was sold at the tax sale, and I bought it, and the time period is run, and I did all the due diligence steps required by law. 6 months have passed. No one else has come forward, or I've done everything correctly. The law says I am now the owner of that property. And if you're doing the non-judicial route, you're simply encapsulating all that in an affidavit, right? And a notarized affidavit saying, I swear I did all those things exactly as they're supposed to be. The affidavit has, it's a form in the statute that you have to fill out and follow and have it notarized and have all of your exhibits attached to it and file it in the public records. And as a matter of statutory law, it says that makes you the owner, or makes you, gives you the right to terminate the interest of those people that you provided the notice to. And that's an important distinction, because you can, there can be many different types of interests in a property, right? You can have you could have 4 people who co-own the property. You could have a mortgage company or a grass cutting lien, and everyone's entitled to the same right to due process. And just because one person was afforded their right doesn't mean everybody was, right? And so one very important distinction of the 2009 law, which was very, very smart to put in there, was recognizing that one person may lose their rights and another person may not. So may have their interest terminated in the property. If you can prove that you provided the requisite amount of effort to notify an interested party and document that in your affidavit and file that, then the law says that you have now terminated whatever rights they had in that property.
Okay.
And so, you know, that what often trips up investors at that stage, even attorneys, is that they don't appreciate the fact that everyone has to be given the same amount of effort of due process, which is the effort to provide them with notice. Of course, a key distinction is, a common misconception is that actual notice is not required by any law, at any level ever. And it's another thing I try to harp on in my paper, because it's so commonly misunderstood, and you know, it's just never been the standard of law in our country. So it's all about establishing that the efforts you went through to provide these people with their required notice was reasonable, right? The effort was reasonable, and you can demonstrate that, and that is the standard.